Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. You know, Jackson, Mississippi, where I always like to say that the air is just a little bit cleaner and the grass is just a little bit greener, and where most of the people in our wonderful state are related to one another. We don't get along, but we're related to one another in more than one way. Your highest number of mulattoes or anywhere in the country will probably reside right here in Jackson, Mississippi. It's difficult to do your family tree before you run into your European ancestors. It's difficult to get all the way back to Africa, and the only way that it can possibly be done is through the female side of your lineage. That's the only way that we can get there. And of course, we don't carry the female name, so it's even more difficult to understand how you get all the way back to your country. Now, why is that important? It's important because any race of people that do not understand where they're from and don't have a homeland and don't identify with a country, then are going to be lost. They're going to have low self-esteem, and they're not going to understand the history and the heritage, and so they don't strive to be what they don't think they've already been. And so it's important. Yes, we are Americans, but you have European Americans, you have Chinese Americans, you have French Americans, you have Italian Americans, you have all of that. And so we have African Americans by name and by title, but not necessarily by philosophy and our thought process. That being, we don't look forward to the great pilgrimage of going back home. We don't look forward to identifying and trying and have a family reunion in Africa. You know, we have to go all the way back to the episodes of Marcus Garvey back in 1909, when Marcus Garvey said that we're going to have to go back home and establish and build a country that we left from. Marcus got in a lot of trouble, but he's one of my heroes because he was a great entrepreneur. He had a fleet of ships, and he was going to sail back to Liberia, and he was going to establish a dominant society by using the talents of blacks had in America as well as the influence of the culture in the country. But Marcus ran into some trouble. He got locked up and eventually exported. And that's what happens to you when you get way out front. And so, you know, here in Mississippi, we have a lot to be proud of. It's just that we don't know it. And so we don't show it as often as we could. Now, we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. We've been seen on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku TV, and our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, where all of your shows and your channels, you have your own channel on our website. So if you wanted to go see what was New Horizon Church doing over the last 5 years, you go to that website and you can pull up that channel, and all of their videos and recordings will be in one place. You can go there and find Socrates Garrett Live from the very beginning of time, and you'll see all of the information that has come through this particular program. So we believe we're on to something. We've studied the media. We're watching the trends. We are beginning to understand social media better. And so there's a tremendous youth movement here at We Believe Digital. And what we're needing is more young people to get involved. So if you're out there, and you don't have to be here to be involved, you know, now the world is digital and it's remote, and it's certainly a lot of talent we can access, even though you may be in another state and city. So if you see ways that we can improve what we're doing and that we can move to the next level, then hit us at 800-492-5186. You know, we know that it's important that we at least attempt to control the narrative about what is happening to black folk. It's tremendously important that we don't let other people record and archive our history. And that's what got us in trouble the first time. And we're continuing to suffer from that right now today with low self-esteem. Now, as always, you know, my co-host is Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He's a man amongst men. He was born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta. But today, he's Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He is the author and the sponsor of the Real News Talk Show. You can find him every Thursday evening at WMPR radio station, 90.1 FM, 100,000 watts broadcasting power. You can also find Dr. Henderson at Facebook on WeBelieveDigital.com on our Facebook page as well. Dr. Henderson, although he was born on a plantation, he is today one of the most sought after speakers in this country, speaking all over America and abroad. He runs workshops that are training people how to access funds and how to build their communities. It's, I believe his next event is on December the 16th, right here in Jackson, Mississippi at the E Center, 1230 Raymond Road in Jackson, Mississippi. You need to attend those workshops to learn how to write grants and how to access funds. He says that there's over $600 billion worth of funding available to African Americans if we just knew how to access it. And so his training and his classes and his lecturing is designed to empower the African American community and help it gather the wealth that it needs to make a difference and change its conditions. Now, sadly, Dr. Henderson always refers to the fact that the African-American race is in a big decline, that we're no longer number one or number two in the pecking order when it comes to the ability to influence what happens in America. We don't control very much. And he says that if we don't do some specific things, we will become totally and completely irrelevant. Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
It's good to have you in the studio, and I've kind of told the viewing audience what you have said will happen to us and tried to tell them a little bit about who you are and where you came from, but I know I didn't do a good job. So I'd like for you to just take over and tell us a little bit about the Henderson story and the Henderson vision.
Thank you, Mr. Socrates. I'm proud to be here again. I do know when I work with you, I learned a lot, especially about your life, your skills, and the will you have to start making a significant change on the local level that then will move into the greater part of Mississippi, the nation, and the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do agree with what you just heard mentioned by Mr. Socrates. I am an old plantation boy, as they used to call us. And I had an opportunity to live on that plantation 17 years in Mississippi, in Hinds County, Mississippi. You heard the story. I was born in the Delta, Mississippi. That's one of the most economic deprived areas in the world, and it's getting worse every year economically. Schools are bad, very few jobs. 98% of the people in the Delta are sick. and those that are not sick will be sick soon. The hospitals are closing. The people are selling and fighting over drugs. Gangbangers are taking over the territory. Police can't be funded because they don't want to work in the police force, making $18,000, $19,000 a year. You find the mothers are not happy with the situation. They can't get abortions like they used to in Mississippi, and now they're going to have thousands and thousands of unwanted children. And the dads that started this process, and I don't include or conclude that the females are to blame. I don't know not one child that was not born without a father, but you see very few fathers in Mississippi and throughout the nation in the black community. Marriage is something that is totally almost out of our minds. 75%, according to some studies, say that's what's happening to the black youth. Say 75% are born out of wedlock. So when you have 75% of your future leaders born out of wedlock, that means they are economically deprived in 99% of the time. So the poor mother needs support from the father. She doesn't get it. She can't live alone because most of them don't have enough education and training to take care of an apartment, a car, and a decent job that make a livable wage. Thus, the poor girl and a child move with grandmother or great-grandmother. She is out of the work market for 2 or 3 years. Then she goes back to school and get in a dead-end job because she doesn't have the educational ability to make a high score on the American College test if she wanted to go to a senior college. So she starts where she can start. But most of them don't understand that they must have a credential, Mr. Socrates, to get into a job that's going to pay what we call a livable wage. So therefore, they must start working at home on Google University and pull up the information they need, ladies and gentlemen. All of you all can do this and pass this along to your children, your churches, and others. Pull up the information on Google University, find out the requirements for whatever you want to do, get that credential, pass those tests, and then get hooked up locally in some of the job programs, the community college, senior colleges, and be competitive. That's what it's all about, Mr. Socrates.
Well, Dr. Henderson, I get that. And that's poverty is the root cause of most of the things that you just outlined that's happening. Young mothers. You know, mothers today at 30 years old are grandmothers. And we have a young female out there trying to raise children without the help of the male in the house. Most of the males in Mississippi and throughout this country, especially in the urban cities, are either incarcerated or they are another persuasion or they just simply don't want to take on the responsibilities. And so the breakdown of the family that you're talking about is something that James Meredith, I believe he's a friend of yours, talked about years and years ago, that we have to reestablish the family in the African American community if we're going to change anything. So how, Dr. Henderson, how are we going to reestablish the basic foundation of a family in the African American community?
Well, it's not as difficult, Mr. Socrates, as one might think. We are not going to do it if we continue on the path that we are moving on now, looking at education in the public and private schools. If we are looking at the government to help us with the families, that's not going to happen. I am predicting and been saying for the last 30 years, ladies and gentlemen, that if you want to change the family structure, you're going to have to do several things. You must get with the churches and start creating training modules in the church about family. Then you put your people into the church schools and work on moral development. Do contracts with the public schools so you can put your kids in programs that they don't have in the church currently. And when you do this, you will find that people will then be taught, Mr. Socrates, that there's something called a family structure. We can encourage more people to refrain from early childbirth, stress and emphasize that it's always better and then prove it. through research that it's best to have another mate, marriage partner, husband, wife, whatever you want to call it, or a combination, when you bring children into the world. In the black community, if a child is born out of wedlock, he is almost guaranteed, if he is a female, she is almost guaranteed to drop out of school before she finishes high school. Most cases, she's going to be pregnant. The young man, if he is born out of wedlock and raised by his grandmother or great-grandmother, I could almost assure you he's not going to pass the 4th grade, so he will drop out in middle school. And before he's 18, he will be in the criminal justice system. And therefore, those kind of young men are not going to get a job in what we call regular society. So they're going to have some kind of black market activity going on in their community. Now, the power structure and what I call the ruling elite not going to allow those young boys to live in their community. So they're going to have to thrive and take everything they can in the ghetto, urban or rural ghettos, and that's going to get everything frustrated because those young men are not the type to get married. But there they are, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 children. I have a lot of relatives like that. And you find that they don't have to get married because the young ladies always appear to love those kind of guys, and they shack with them, let them live with them, with their grandparents, and it's getting worse and worse every day. And I have a conclusion for that and a resolution later on in this show.
Why are we attracted to that image? Is it because that it's an image that shows that we can live better, that we are not afraid? Or is it an image that represents rebellion against the establishment? Why is it that young girls would be attracted to individuals that are not in school, that are not trying to go anywhere? And in our days when we was coming up, everybody said, we don't have, the boys in the band didn't have this greater opportunity to get a girlfriend as the athletes did, or the guys that wasn't even in school. At Jackson State University back in the day, we had more boys from Jim Hill and Lanier around campus than you had on campus. They didn't even attend school, and the girls were attracted to that group of folk. And so America, though, loves a gangster. I mean, they love people that thrive in the criminal environment. And so we are infatuated with that, and goes all the way back to Wyatt Earp and Marsha Dillon and all of those individuals, Jesse James. And so we as a society love gangsters and criminals, don't we?
We do, because they found, and if you do the research, I don't want to get into this again, but if you look at the research, you find that criminality started back in the 1500s in America, where the Pope put out a mandate that told the Europeans, whenever we go and find a new land, we're going to eventually conquer the land by one way or the other. We're going to move in, get to know the so-called natives, get them Christianized, and if they refuse that, we're going to take the land. If they fight against that, we're going to kill them. That was a mandate issued by the Pope some years ago, many years ago. But now you find the church is still hooked up in this kind of thing. You find that the religious communities are looking at very, very few things economically other than they help the preachers get rich. They don't have the programs in the community to work with the people that I mentioned earlier, the poor mothers, the poor fathers, the grandmothers that are 30 and great-grandmothers who 55 to 60 to raising all these children. And the situation is so bad now, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the world, until the black female, who is the teacher of the family, is in such a bad shape they can't find the person they need to be with, so they just align themselves with the criminal. Now let me give you a real example of what I saw 2 days ago. I had a conference with a young lady, and she is just 18 years of age, high school graduate, not in college at the time, but she intended to go to college. And she showed me a picture of her boyfriend on a bed, stretched out in the bed, with dollar bills all around him, $100 bills, $50 bills, 10, 20s. She counted that money up, and it was over $200,000 right here in Hinds County. 19-year-old young man. I say, where does he work? She said, he doesn't have a job. Where does he live? He lives with his mother. Where does she work? She works in a cafeteria. How did he get that money? I don't know. I don't know. But she is dating this guy. So if he's not writing books, if he is not out there singing and rapping, which he's not doing, either one of those things, he must be engaged in some kind of underground activity. And she loves that guy. She loves him. Say, he told me he's going to buy me a car. We're going to get married one day. And I say it would not happen. He's 19 now. Before he's 21, he's going to be in prison. No, he's not. He's a good boy. I say that's who goes to prison, the good boys.
Doc, we're getting ready to take a station ID. You know, you're watching We Believe Digital Broadcast Studio, located right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, if you're on Facebook, if you're watching us there, we want you to share this program with your friends and family. And we also want you to send us some stars so that we'll be able to keep this program on the air. It's tremendously important. You know, if 100,000 of you out there would just send us 1 star or 2 stars, it means a great deal. And that's what we're going to have. We're going to have a collective effort to try and run this program. And so we need your help there. If you're on our website, webelievedigital.com, hit the donate button. Hit the donate button and send us as much as you possibly can to help us keep this program on the air. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. We're getting deep into the monetization of social media. And so the things that I'm talking about are critically important. You can help us out there. Those of you that are not living in Mississippi but understand the challenges that we face here in Mississippi, gotta be willing to assist in any way that you can. Now we're going to go to a station break and we'll be right back and continue this conversation. Stay tuned.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Are you dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. Jackson, Mississippi, where the city itself is 85% African American, but yet we have a poverty rate that's greater than 35% in Jackson, Mississippi. Large number of African Americans, large number of poverty rates, the high poverty rate in Mississippi. You know, we're quite unhealthy in the state of Mississippi. There are reasons for all of this. We're under tremendous challenges in the Mississippi. We are last in most economic statistics. And we got to change that. We got to change that for survival of our population in Mississippi, but we got to change it so that Mississippi moves forward and creates an economy that everybody can share in. You know, we're last in everything. We're a poor state. We're a welfare state. For every dollar that we send to Washington, D.C., we get $3.46 back from the federal government. If the federal government would remove its subsidy, its welfare payment to the state of Mississippi, it would bankrupt the state in 60 days. If you remove the EBT card and the food stamps out of the state of Mississippi, it would bankrupt the state in less than 30 days. And so we're in bad shape down here, but that doesn't mean we're not trying, and that doesn't mean we're not fighting and clawing and raising a boatload of hell to try to change conditions. The African American population is greater than 40% in the state of Mississippi. In the state, we have less than 3 million people totally. I can drive for days and days and days and not see anybody. If I'm in Chicago, I get nervous because every time I turn, I bump into somebody. I don't like being that close to people all of the time. But in Mississippi, we can just drive and drive and drive, and we have beautiful lakes. We got great weather. The climate is good. You can play golf, you can fish, you can go down on our beautiful Gulf Coast down in Biloxi and Gulfport where the white sand beaches are there, but yet we're last as a state. Now, when you compare that with the 2nd Congressional District where my friend Dr. Eldridge Henderson was born, it's the poorest congressional district in the country. It's 95% African Americans up in that 2nd Congressional District, and we have extreme poverty there. And our state and our federal government has refused to invest in the areas that are predominantly black. Now, some parts of our state are doing better. When we look at what's called the Golden Triangle up in Tupelo, Columbus, Starkville area, where you have Mississippi State University and Ole Miss University and MUW in a close proximity to one another. The federal government put an Air Force base in Columbus, invested heavily in that corridor, and we're doing extremely well up there as a state. We go all the way up to South Haven. A lot of people that live in Memphis, Tennessee actually live in Mississippi, right across the state line. They don't act like we do in Jackson up in that part of the state. But what did we put over in the African American communities? This is an indictment against our federal government and an indictment against our state leaders. What did we put in the African American diaspora? We put casinos. There's a casino in Greenville. There's a casino in Vicksburg. There's a casino in Natchez. All of these are heavily populated with African Americans. And what do casinos do to a community and to a certain ethnic group? It's false hope. You don't have enough money to pay your rent, so you can only have half of the money, so you know you're going to get evicted. So what do? You take that half that you have and you go to the boat. And then you lose that. And I tell you, I forget the artist that put out the song that, he's got 50 cents more he's going to keep because he lost everything else. And we have a high addiction to gambling, and we have a high crime rate in our urban cities. And some of this stuff is orchestrated and intentional. And it's intentional when you don't do anything to correct it. You don't put programs, you don't put Job Corps centers in the African American communities, when you don't put industry. There are no jobs in the urban city. There are no companies here. There are no industry moving into the urban city. They move everywhere around the urban city. And we build these great highways and these corridors that makes the traffic go around Jackson. We call those bypasses. That means that you don't even have to come through Jackson if you're coming from 55 North and going to 55 South to go from Tennessee to Macomb or Biloxi or Baton Rouge. You don't even have to stop in Jackson. The bypass will take you by. It's by design. And if you don't stop in Jackson, if you don't have to come through it, you don't shop in Jackson. And what do you see? You see surrounding communities that are very prosperous. You see that Jackson is what we call the donut hole. Everything is growing and beautiful around Jackson, but that donut hole, we have extreme poverty. And we have to fix that. And we fix that with effective policy. Yeah, African Americans have to fix their own problems. We realize that no one is coming and save us. We realize that. But yet, we have so much division and so much infighting in our community amongst our leaders until we are falling victims to the plans that were set in place years ago when the book was written on how to keep Negroes in slavery. And it said, turn the fat ones against the thin ones, the tall ones against the short ones, the dark ones against the bright ones. Keep them fighting amongst themselves, and nothing good can ever come. And we're doing a tremendous amount of that infighting right here in Jackson, Mississippi today. It's very painful to watch. Our city is under attack. Quite frankly, we have lost most of the city. It's much like Ukraine in a way. The invasion has taken place and most of the city has been occupied. Now, what am I talking about? How can the city be occupied? Well, you see, Jackson was a beautiful city. It was the capital city of the state of Mississippi. Beautiful downtown. Banks, the finance institution, the hospitals were here. It was thriving. But back in 1995, Harvey Johnson became the first African-American mayor and white flight began. And everybody began to move out of Jackson like they did in Detroit and St. Louis, Baltimore. It's the same plan. There's one playbook that everybody is running according to the scripture. And so all of that is happening to us right here in Jackson. And we got to find a way to correct this ourselves. Now, when I say it's occupied, Jackson has now 2 police departments, one where the citizens elected a mayor and a police chief and got confirmed by our council, and that police department is the traditional police department here in Jackson, Mississippi. But due to the high crime rate and other ambitious people, Jackson now has a second police department inside its own city limits, and it's called the Capital City Police. It's quite frankly, manpower-wise, may be close to being the same size of our police department for the entire city. And yet it only covers 1/10 of the city. Has no patrol or care about what goes on in South Jackson, where the majority of African Americans live. So we have 2 police departments. Jackson now has a third-party czar that has taken over the management of our drinking water plant and of our billing system on our water side. We've lost control of that. We had our wastewater treatment plant, was the regional wastewater treatment plant. We treated all of the waste and everything else from all of the surrounding cities like Flowood and Pearl, but now they build their own. They're no longer a tenant for Jackson. And so we don't have much revenue anymore. Our property taxes are high. We pay more for price of a car tag than any place else in the whole world. And it's evident that Jackson is in trouble. Now, I'm going to turn to my guest, and I'm going to ask him, what is it that African Americans have to do to try to stop this great skid, this great decline that we're currently experiencing?
Well, again, you talked about some dire things that's happening in Mississippi, all over the country. Everything you talked about started off with a lack of economics. You mentioned the fact that we have a beautiful state. You're exactly right. Lakes and green farms everywhere. But they're owned by the group of people that I've been talking about for some time that control the politicians, the preachers, and the corporate leaders. And those are the individuals with 3 things that we know that can help change things. One is property, money, and control of the special interest groups. These property owners that have the money influence the legislatures, the city government, the county government, the preachers, and the corporate leaders to the point where they pass special legislation to do anything they can to keep their power base strong. I'm not saying they're bribing people, but they have the majority in most of the areas where they make decisions, and where they don't have a majority, they create one by doing what they always done, find blacks that'll go against their own interests and vote for their own demise. But we can't worry about that. Mr. Socrates, we must look at ourselves and blame ourselves for not taking advantage of the opportunities that are here in Mississippi. To give you an example, many people don't know it, but they have a great education system in the state if you take advantage of it. They have 16 community colleges that'll take anybody from 16 up to 60, whether they have a high school diploma or not. They have about 9 private community colleges or vocational schools. We have all kinds of senior colleges. And the simple educational process in Mississippi is if you don't have a high school diploma, if you're 16, you can go join the following agencies. You can get in the Job Corps. You can get in almost any of the community colleges I'm making, public and private, and get a start in a vocational or technical program, 6-week program, 12-month programs, 18-month programs. Then one can get a credential that's pulled and move forward economically. If they don't want to get a job when they finish these vocational technical programs, another avenue we have here in Mississippi, they can join the National Guard or the regular military and go to college if they want to get that bad college degree, what I call the one that can hurt a lot of black folks. We have borrowed millions of dollars throughout the state of Mississippi and the South to attend college because many of the parents want their kids to go to a 4-year college. But only about 1/4 can finish in the allotted time, which is 2 years or 4 years. 3/4 really don't, because they don't have the economic nor the education ability to stay in these places and finish. So we're going to have to go the short route, starting on the local level, and the parents going to have to encourage their children to get into learning institutions while they are young. You don't wait. Get them trained. Got to do it in the church so you can have that agenda where they teach all the life skills, financial literacy, have each one teaching one. Allow the honor students in the church that's in the various schools, teach the students that are members of the church that are not doing very well. Have tutorial programs in the church. Have senior programs in the church where they pair them with young people and be the guide as mothers and fathers for them. So we can solve our problems if we work on it, but we got to do it without waiting for the federal government or the state government to do it, because they are designed not to do anything but help us fail. So you can't blame them. They are doing what they've been taught to do through their religion, which is white supremacy. That's a strong desire of most people in America. They believe in white supremacy. I call that a religion. Europeans only. That's in the legislation, starting from 1776.
Now, religion is another subject. We often have some discussions about religion. And I always submit to you that religion is the one thing that allowed our ancestors to take the abuse that was occurring every day, knowing that there was going to be a better place at the end. And so the principle of turn the other cheek served our race well, because you quite frankly could not take on the master and win at that point anyway. And they had a lot of lives had to be lost for us to even get the right to vote and to try and make a difference. But religion is a critical part of the African American community. It has to serve us well. It has to show that we can have heaven on earth and heaven after death. Is it currently doing that?
No. I would be very quick and pacific to tell you no. The black church in America doing less today, and I believe today is December the 3rd or 4th, 2022, than they did 1 year after slavery in 1865. The churches had training institutions. They were teaching adults and others how to read and write. They had industrial type programs. They had savings and loan societies. They didn't call them banks during that time, but eventually they started some banks through these churches and credit unions. They had private entities that got together and created vocational and technical programs. One was Painted Woods, another was Utica Institute. They had them all over the United States. They couldn't go to the so-called predominantly white schools at that time, so they created their own. Then they were locked into their communities. So the black lawyers and doctors and teachers and all lived together, and they worked as monitors for each other, worked with the children. The lawyer was a member of the church. He was one of the ruling elite in the church. So they had an opportunity to show themselves and see that the black people here can see me. But now, with this so-called integration that a lot of people love, the so-called ruling elite, the 10% of blacks, have moved out now into the suburbs. They are in the gated communities. They are not even coming back to their own churches. They are joining churches that other people have that's already established in their gated communities and in their areas of what I call economic concern. So the people in the ghetto or in the urban ghettos are left alone to fight among themselves. And that is exactly what is happening. We are to blame because we don't take positive corrective action with a plan and a timeline to make things change.
Well, we were accounted for in the Bible, were we not? I know we were not accounted for in the Constitution. I get that.
Right.
But were we accounted for in the Bible?
Well, we were accounted for in the Bible, but the interpretation messed us up. The Bible said through the slave master preachers and the preachers they appointed that we are subject to the will of our master on earth. We are subject to his abuse, his cruelty, and the fact that if he wants to kill us, we are to accept that because you honor and respect the master first and then wait until you die and go and get your reward. That's what the Bible taught, and you will find that the Bible had good examples there. One man left his master. He was a slave. I believe it was John, one of those disciples, found him and said, you go back to your slave and ask for forgiveness. He wrote a letter and told the slave owner, I'm going to send this boy back to you, and you give him respect, but give him his job back. Simple. We have learned in the Bible. That kind of religion will keep you in hell on earth every time.
We're getting ready to go to a station break. We're going to continue these conversations and this dialogue so that we can enlighten our community. If you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and families, and we want you to send us stars. The stars are very much needed to help fund and finance this program and other programs like this that are only seen on WeBelieveDigital.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. The more subscribers we get there, we'll have the ability to monetize this program through YouTube. If you're watching us on our very own platform, which this program is live on, WeBelieveDigital.com, then we want you to hit the donate button. Those dollars will help us continue this program and others like this throughout this entire year. Now, we're going to station break, and we'll be right back after this.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection. Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee. To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi in our very own broadcast studios. We're being seen on Roku TV. We're being seen on YouTube, on Facebook, and our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, we want you to hit the donate button. Love to hear from you that way. We need help and financial support to keep these programs on air. If you're watching us on Facebook, share this program with your friends and family and send us stars. You know, we were so delighted to receive 1,000 stars from our last program. It helps a great deal. So send us stars if you're there on the Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. You can also see us on TikTok. We have programs over there. We have programs on Instagram. And I think we have programs even on Twitter. But we're not really approaching Twitter right now. It seems to be having enough trouble of its own with Kanye West and Mr. Lusk. So we're going to let them roll for a little bit by themselves. But we need your support and your help. Now, we've been talking about the beautiful things that can occur in Jackson, Mississippi, when we say that we got the best weather, when we say we got the most greenery, when we say that the soil in the Mississippi Delta is rich and more fertile than any place except the banks of the Nile. If that's the kind of soil that we have in the Mississippi Delta, we'll grow absolutely anything. And so Mississippi is blessed from an ecology standpoint and from the gifts of God that is giving this state the proximity that it has. That means that we have a great ports down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Well, I said earlier, you know, we have the beautiful beaches down there, so we have access for our shipping, our cargoes. We have a port at Vicksburg on the mighty Mississippi River, where cargoes should be coming in every day. We're ideally situated. You know, we're at the intersection of I-55 and Interstate 20, from north and south versus east and west. We're 200 miles away from Mobile, 200 miles away from Birmingham, 200 miles away from Shreveport, 200 miles away from Memphis, Tennessee. So we should be an absolute a hub for cargo and transportation, but we're not. And we have not been. And there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is, in fact, leadership deficits. Those individuals that have had the hem of the ring or the governing control of the great state of Mississippi has made absolutely certain that it remained last. And this is what I don't get. Primarily for the responsibility to keep the African-American population on the very bottom. You can't keep a man in the ditch unless you get in there with him. And so we have to do something about this. We have to have a change in aptitude and a change in attitude in our leadership. Now this weekend, we have an example of what real leadership looks like and could look like. This weekend, the championship of the SWAC, the football game is being played right here in Jackson, Mississippi. The coach, Deion Sanders, has come into Mississippi, and he has ridden in here and got more done in 2 years than others have done in 200 years. For the first time in Jackson State history, it has an undefeated season where they went 11-0. First time. Young man came in here and changed the dynamics, changed the colors, changed how the Jackson State was looked upon, changed the recruiting game, and captured the #1 recruit out of South Florida to Jackson State University, which shook the entire football nation. White coaches all over the world, including Lou Saban, were saying that we cannot allow this to happen. We cannot allow this talent to go to a small HBCU. But Deion was able to do that. And this weekend, he's going to fill the Mississippi Memorial Stadium. It's going to be 60,000 people in Jackson, Mississippi, attending that football game. The economy, the restaurants, the hotels, the bars, the lounges are just going to be overrun with customers and clients. It's going to be an economic bonanza for those that are in position to take advantage of it. Now, Deion showed that that could be done. Prior to Deion coming here, Mississippi has 8 major universities in our state. Now, we have more universities in our state than any other state. We have less students in all 8 universities than they have at UCLA in one place. But that's the remnants of the impact of slavery and desegregation. When we have universities like Mississippi Valley State University and Delta State University, we're just standing right there looking at one another. Or when you have MUW and Mississippi State University standing right there in Starkville looking at one another. And it was done and designed so that African Americans could get back to the field quicker after they were allowed to go to school. So we'll build you a school right here next to the farm. So when you walk out the classroom, you can walk back over here on the plantation and go back to work. But you put it in place now, we don't know how to get out of it. So Jackson State University is the only university that plays in the Mississippi Memorial Stadium, the largest stadium in the state of Mississippi. It's the only school that's there. And for years, we had poor attendance at a football game there. But Mr. Deion Sanders came in here with a philosophy of we believe and I believe, and he has built a program that is dominating in the SWAC. And the SWAC championship game will be this Saturday. Even 2 weeks ago, we had ESPN live at the Jackson State football game, first time in history. We've seen pro athlete and coaches that have come to Jackson to support this great champion, Deion Sanders, an individual that made the commitment to move himself and his family, his boys, to Jackson State University to play football. One man can make a difference. One individual can make a difference. And so we're going to have that kind of leadership in the governor's office. We're going to have that kind of leadership in the mayor's office. We're going to have that kind of leadership at the president of the board of supervisors. We're going to have that kind of leadership as our school superintendents. We're going to have that kind of leadership at our airport authorities. Those institutions that are predominantly black and controlled by black folks, with the exception of the governor's office. We're going to have dynamic leadership to change this thing. Now, Dr. Henderson, this weekend is going to be absolutely fantastic in the city of Jackson. What is the economic impact of the game this weekend?
Well, there are a lot of predictions, anywhere from $6 to $10 million. I noticed when I was coming in, they had people out in parking lots at stores selling shirts and caps, flowers, all kinds of things. Some of the people that were here a few weeks ago for Thanksgiving, are still here in Jackson. They got 2 weeks off. So they have been spending money for almost 2 weeks. Jackson is not going to be recovered with all this money, but a lot of people are going to make a lot of money. The restaurants and other businesses are going to have a profit at the end, and then they can rebuild. That's why, Mr. Socrates, we're going to have to do the black folks the same way. We're going to have to revamp and renew the black man. And that's why I tell people, all of you all that's living out of the state that's from the South, Mr. Socrates mentioned the fact that it's about 50% of this population black. All of you all that have skills and you're retired and you don't want to live in those inner cities and big cities and other states, you ought to move back to Mississippi. Move to a southern state. There are about 6 states in this southern area right now. If you all would move back and regain your citizenship in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and others, you will be in a position where you can control the state starting on the local level. And that's what we have to do, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot wait for your governor and your president to do anything about it for you anymore. They're not going to do it. You got to start on the local level in 5 areas of activity. That's education and training, economic development, politics, leadership, and religion. And you start those local levels where you train your own leaders, and you then get them to the point where you can put them in advisory positions on agencies in the city, the county, put them on boards of control when they are 18 and 21 years of age. In 7 years, we can turn this thing around. You would then have young people, if you train them properly, run for local city councils, for local supervisors, put them on the housing agency, put them on commissions as interns, assign them to that when they're in their training programs, and they'll know about the order of government. And new people will come in, Mr. Socrates, renewed, revamped. And in 7 years, you can see a significant change all over the South. If they would change the new man and start training him in church-related training institutions, because it's not going to happen elsewhere.
Well, Doc, we had a major achievement when we changed the Mississippi flag. It was probably one of the last flags to be changed. But that was major, don't you think?
Oh, it was, yeah, but it was changed for the wrong reason. It was not changed because of the fact that the flag hurt the psychic of black folks when they see that dominating flag waving and popping. They thought about slavery, the Ku Klux Klan, and all those other negatives. White folks knew that. That's why they didn't want to change it. But when their peers start saying, we're not going to bring economic activity to Mississippi, that flag was changed in less than 30 days.
Well, so the ability to impact the economy is the greatest weapon of change that we have.
That's right. That's why if black people would pool their resources, as we said last night, and build compacts, contracts, and memorandum of understanding with other blacks and black churches, schools, community organizations, solidify with a prioritized corrective action plan in these 5 areas that I mentioned, education, economic development, politics, and leadership, starting on the local level where they're in the majority, they can control all of these agencies. And when you have your own people trained, they will know how to put programs together that will create something for themselves. They'll know how to include others if there's a need to do so. They'll know how to go to the opposition in other parties and get monies that's available by law. And then they'll know how not to allow themselves to be hooked up and be controlled by outside entities just to get some money. On and on and on. They don't have but 7 years left on January the 1st to get this thing together. I've been telling you about the 10-year plan that we have as black people. 3 of them are gone in the next, I believe, 23 or 24 days. So we have roughly 7 years to do what I'm talking about, and it can be done. In 7 years, where you in the majority control the local education system, the local economic system, the local planning boards, All of those things can be changed in 7 years.
Now, Doc, you mentioned the 10-year plan. And I want our viewers out there to understand that planning occurs every day. Black folk don't plan for the future because they're so busy surviving for today that they do very little planning for the future. But in Mississippi, there is a 20-year plan that is in place. What Jackson, Mississippi should look like in the year of 2042. That plan is already in place. They know what areas are going to be developed, you know, where the economy is going to move to, where the businesses are going to move to, where we're going to build the roads, where we're going to put in the infrastructure, and how long it's going to take to put those things in place. Black folk very seldom understand what's going on, and so we don't get into the economy that they are planning for. But you say there's a 10-year plan for black folk. I don't hear black folks talking about the plan and what Jackson and what black races ought to look like in 2032, in 10 years from today. Yeah. I don't hear anybody talking about that other than you, and I don't know if we understand what you're talking about.
Well, a lot of people don't, but what happens, sir, you don't make things happen overnight. You got to have someone talking about what is expected. Some people, and I'm not one of them, call these people prophets. The prophets always come into an area and tell people what they're doing wrong and how they can change things if they do certain things. Read the Bible, you'll find that. And many times people were castigating these prophets. They were telling them, you got to stop sinning. You got to start looking out for yourself. You got to start working for yourself. You're going to have to train your children. And they have all kinds of information like this in the Bible. And one day, someone will come along and lead you out of Egypt. But right now, we don't need a prophet if you do common sense things. Where you're in the majority, you control the education, the politics, religion, and leadership in those areas with new leadership. That's why we are asking people living in other states that are retired, that's not happy where they are, and many are not, move back to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and take over the local areas of activity. That can be done overnight. Get on the boards, get on the commissions, be part of the planning, and know where the commercial area is going to be. Buy land in those areas 15 years before they get there. Know where the residential section is going to be. Buy land 10 to 15 years in those areas while it's cheap. And if you do this, black folks, you'll find that in any state or in the city you're in, if you don't do this, Mr. Socrates talked about this 15 to 20 plan, you're going to be excluded. Because if they have a residential area, you're not included. If they have a commercial area, ladies and gentlemen, black folks are not going to be included. And it is simple economics. The prices are going to be too high for you to live in those areas. They're going to have more private schools in those areas. To qualify, you're going to have to make too high of grades. You're going to have to get recommendations from other folks to get your child in there. And to get some of those jobs, you're going to have to go through a strenuous process and have certifications that you don't have. But if you look at the situation that we have now in this state, I told you the education institutions are prepared for people to take advantage of the future if they would just go to school and start where they are with what they have and move from there. The church leadership is there structure-wise. We have all the churches we need with all the space. The utilities are paid. So all they have to do now is get in there and start training their members and then move to denominational training institutions and build colleges, banks, businesses, and produce goods and services. And then set up international markets. All this can be done in Jackson, Mississippi in 7 years.
Doc, we have 7 years to get it done.
That's all.
You said we lost 3 of the 10 years already.
Because I've been talking about it specifically for 3 years. And I don't reveal everything, but there are some plans and actual things happening where young people are being trained very slowly and secretly. And sooner or later, they are going to be appointed to various commissions and agencies and boards without any fanfare. And then within a few years, those young people are going to be running for a county supervisor, city council, get on the school board, because they're going to be trained that way. They're not going to be 40, 50, 60 years of age. They're going to be from 18 to 25 years of age on those boards for control. And they are going to be trained in leadership, in politics. They're going to know about negotiation, conflict resolution. And they're going to know 3 things that we don't know today as black folks. You got to look out for yourself first, your family second, and your community third. But we don't have a black community, so therefore we've got to build one. And all this can be done in 7 years if you have faith and listen to the prophet.
We have come to the end of our time this evening. You know, we've enjoyed bringing you the information that we share on this program. And it doesn't just work for Jackson. This works for all of our urban cities and black folks throughout this entire world. It's valuable information, planning, developing leadership, changing the economy, changing the perspective, raising the self-esteem, rebuilding the family, control where you can. Where you can't control, then influence best you can. In Mississippi, in our Mississippi legislature, we have a House that it has 74 Republicans, 42 Democrats, 3 independents. A supermajority is 71, and we already have 74 Republicans. So you understand that in that position, you can't control, you must influence, and you must advocate, you must speak out loud. In our Senate, we have 36 Republicans and 16 Democrats. Supermajority is 31. The Republicans already have 36. So again, we have to be an advocacy group from these positions, and you must speak out loud so that the citizens will know that you not sleep at the wheel and that we've got to get things done even when the odds are against us. And we do that sometimes through negotiations, but there ought not be any contracts for goods and service that are awarded that does not have elected officials screaming to the top of their voice for minority participation. Got to scream to the top of your voice for minority participation so that we build our own economy. We rebuild Black Wall Street in Jackson, Mississippi. It can be done. Doc, our time has run out. You have any parting shots?
Well, just one thing. I want people to call me if they need a speaker to hear some of these things. What I talk about on radio and TV is what I call the L. Henderson public version. But I have some real news for you when I come and talk to you at your church, your schools, your community organization. And we have put the plan together and show you how you can do things now in 7 years, starting where you are with what you have. We'll show them how to build coalitions, and all they have to do is call me at 601-201-1957. We'll go to any school, any community organization, any state, and we can do it with a week's notice.
That's it for tonight. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same station. Good night. Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again.